Everyone thought Mr. Gray was just a quiet old man, until the night I saw him disappear behind my wall. It all started so normally. Living in a city apartment building means you get used to a certain level of anonymity. You nod to neighbors in the hallway, maybe exchange a brief "How are you?" But that's about it. My life was a comfortable routine. Wake up, make coffee, check the mail, work from home. Simple, predictable, safe. Or so I thought. Then, the small, unsettling things began. Little glitches in my perfectly curated life. A package from Amazon, marked as delivered, would be nowhere to be found. My spare keys, which I always left in the ceramic bowl by the door, would vanish for a day, only to reappear in the exact same spot. At first, I blamed my own forgetfulness. I must be getting absent-minded, I'd muttered to myself, forcing a laugh. But the feeling of being of guilt grew. The lights in my apartment started acting up, flickering at odd hours. I'd call the building's maintenance, but they'd find nothing wrong. Old wiring, they'd say with a shrug. But it felt like more than that. It felt intentional. I started seeing things out of the corner of my eye, a flicker of movement. A shadow that seemed to stretch just a little too long, a little too unnaturally, before snapping back into place. I tried to rationalize it all. Stress, lack of sleep, an overactive imagination fueled by too many late-night horror movies. But a cold knot of dread was tightening in my stomach. A persistent whisper that told me I wasn't just imagining things. My focus soon shifted to my next-door neighbor, Mr. Gray. He was a recluse, an elderly man who I rarely saw. He moved in about 6 months ago, and in all that time, I could count our interactions on one hand. They were always brief, just a fleeting glimpse of his back as he shuffled down the hall. But lately, his presence had become heavier. Late at night, when the building was supposed to be silent, I'd hear things from his apartment. Not loud noises, but subtle, unnerving sounds, a rhythmic, muffled thumping, like someone pacing back and forth on a thick rug for hours on end. And then there were the whispers, faint, raspy sounds that seemed to bleed through the shared wall. Too low to make out any words, but the tone was enough to make my skin crawl. One night, I couldn't sleep. The pacing next door had been going on for what felt like an eternity. Driven by a mix of irritation and a growing sense of unease, I crept to my front door and looked through the peephole. The hallway was dimly lit, as always, but then I saw him. Mr. Gray. He was standing directly in front of my door, perfectly still. He wasn't trying the handle. He wasn't knocking. He was just standing there. As primera wa, ched my heart hammering against my ribs. He slowly turned his head, and for a split second, his eyes seemed to meet mine through the tiny lens. A cold, vacant stare. I jumped back from the door, my breath catching in my throat. I waited, listening, but there was only silence. The next few days were a blur of paranoia. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind against the window, sent a jolt of fear through me. I started barricading my door at night with a chair, a completely irrational act that offered a sliver of comfort. I became obsessed with the sounds coming from his apartment. I'd press my ear against the wall, trying to decipher the whispers, trying to understand the source of the strange, rhythmic tapping that had replaced the pacing. One evening, the tapping was louder than ever. It was coming from the far end of the living room wall, the one that separated my apartment from Mr. Gray's. It was a slow, deliberate tap, tap, tap. Tap, almost like a code. Curiosity, a foolish and dangerous kind, got the better of me. I walked over to the wall and tentatively tapped back. Tap, tap, tap. Silence. The tapping from the other side stopped instantly. I held my breath, waiting. Nothing. Then, I heard it. A faint scraping sound. Not from his apartment, but from my side of the wall. Right in front of me. I ran my hands over the wallpaper, my fingers searching for any imperfection, and then I found it. A barely perceptible seam, hidden perfectly within the floral pattern of the wallpaper. A hairline crack outlining a small, square section of the wall. My mind was racing. This was insane. There couldn't be a door here. It was a solid wall. I pushed against it gently. Nothing. I pushed harder, putting my shoulder into it. With a low groan of protesting plaster and old wood, the section of the wall swung inward, revealing a pitch-black opening. It wasn't a door to his apartment. It was a tunnel, a narrow, dark passageway. Inside the walls of the building, the air that wafted out was stale and smelled of dust and something else. Something faintly metallic and sweet. My heart was a drum against my ribs. Every instinct screamed at me to slam the door shut, pretend I never saw it, call the police. But I had to know. What was he doing? Where did this go? With my phone's flashlight as my only guide, I squeezed into the opening. The passage was tight, the walls rough and unfinished. I could see pipes and wiring snaking through the darkness. I moved slowly, my footsteps echoing in the confined space. The passage turned a corner, and I saw a faint light up ahead. It was coming from a crack under another door. I reached it and paused, listening. I could hear that same raspy whispering from inside, clearer now, but still unintelligible, taking a deep, shaky breath. I pushed the door. It swung open silently into a small, windowless room, and what I saw made the air freeze in my lungs. The walls were covered, floor to ceiling, with photographs. Hundreds of them, and they were all of me. Me, making coffee in my kitchen, taken from an impossible angle. Me, sleeping in my bed, the picture grainy as if taken in near darkness. Me, reading on my couch, my back to a hidden lens. There were even pictures of me from before I lived here. Pictures from my social media, printed out and pinned to the wall. In the center of the room was a single wooden chair and a small table. On the table was my spare set of keys, my missing Amazon package. A floorboard creaked behind me, a spoon around my light, cutting through the darkness of the tunnel. For a single, horrifying second, the beam caught a tall, elongated shadow, a grotesque silhouette of a man, before it vanished around the corner. "Mr. Gray," I whispered, my voice trembling. There was no answer, only the sound of a distant footstep, and then silence. I scrambled back out of the room, back through the suffocating tunnel, and burst into my living room, gasping for air. I turned and slammed the hidden door shut. It clicked into place with a horrifying finality. I stared at the wall, my whole body shaking. The wallpaper was seamless. The faint outline of the door was gone. It was just a wall again, as if nothing had ever happened. I've been sitting here for hours, staring at that spot. The building is quiet now. The whispers have stopped. The tapping is gone. But I can't shake the feeling of being watched. Every so often, I think I see it. A flicker of movement in the corner of my eye, a shadow on the wall that seems to twist and stretch when I am not looking directly at it. The door is gone, but he isn't. So, let me ask you, if you found a hidden door in your wall, would you open it? And the biggest question that keeps me awake at night, what do you think happened to Mr. Gray? Let me know your theories in the comments. I'll be reading them. Thanks for watching.